Well, it's another day, another week for you watching, but again with the garage and again with patching, priming, painting the wall behind the shelf. So now I'm sitting in a mass of bins because I just decided to take everything off so I can do it all at once. Might as well. So right now I have just put down some touch-ups, little things everywhere, little pinholes or little cuts, holes, bumps, anything that I found in the existing drywall that could be an issue, so that's all patched up and drying. So we'll let that dry for probably an hour or so, whenever it gets fully cured, and then we can sand it down, prime it, and then paint it. Don't know if I'll be able to do that today, but maybe. We'll see. Well, I was hoping I'd be able to start sanding stuff tonight, but all the patches there, at least the major ones, are still drying. You can see that little patch there that's still wet. I'm assuming it's probably because it's a lot colder out than it normally is, so it's taking a little bit longer to set, but in any case, we're moving on to lights. So conveniently today I got an Amazon delivery of 2 more of these motion sensor lights. I already have 4 up here, but the problem that I've found over the last few weeks is that these paddle boards block the motion detector, so if I'm working in any of these 2 corners, like when I was doing the drywall above the water heater right there, or when I was doing the painting in the corner behind the toolbox, the motion detectors weren't picking me up because it was being blocked, so all the lights would shut off. So I decided to get 2 more so that I could put one right here and then one on the exact same side between the paddleboard and the wall. So that way, hopefully I cover all of my bases, and that way there's at least one light that will pick up my motion and stay on so that I don't get stuck in the dark. Ta-da! We got our additional lights on both sides. So now, hopefully, I will be able to work anywhere. Well, actually, I won't be able to work in this area, but I can work everywhere else in the garage and not be stuck in the dark. I'd like to say that's all that I need, but we'll see. In maybe a month or 2, maybe I end up getting a couple more for up in this area. Woo! We are back in the master bath. And a few things that I did last week, but doing a lot more today. So last week, at some point during the week, I cut a channel here all the way across of the drywall so I can get access behind the wall. Reason being is because right here we have an outlet and we want to put a mirror outlet, basically the exact same one but on the other side, for access there. So that way we both have outlets next to each sink. So this channel was cut alongside so we could run the wire through the posts, and thankfully I saw that there was a wire right there, so I cut 1 inch just around here, just underneath the wire, so all of these holes were already made, which was great. All I had to do was make a hole in this post, cut between these 2, and then run the wire up here where we're going to put the outlet. I also cut a hole down here because on the other side of this wall, directly on the other side, is one of those shelves in the living room, and we want to put plants up there that might need lights or some kind of decoration, so we're actually going to put an outlet up on the shelf, which is just going to be right behind here. I have a pin in there and it goes right through the drywall so we can see exactly where it is in the living room. We'll do that a little bit later. But I got all of this wire finally fished all the way across and then up into this outlet right here so it can tie into the electrical. This corner right here was such a pain in the butt because even though the holes here are already existing, I had to poke it through here, but in order to get it to go out and then bent and then around and then out here, I did have to make a cut on the other side of the wall in the master here so I could feed it out and then back in with that severe angle. There was no way I was going to be able to do that from the inside of the bathroom, so unfortunate because we just did these walls. I mean, I really don't want to have to redo the walls, but it is what it is, and I guess, you know, we just have to deal with a little 1 by 5 inch square, so it shouldn't be too bad. All done for now. We got the new outlet set up. It's working. Everything's tested. Green lights all around. That one, of course, is still working. Now, we do still have to mount the one on the other side of this wall, but once we do that, then we should be able to close up everything. We can at least close up this channel right here, but we'll have to drop wire from this down to that. So we'll do that another day, probably.
So since we got this repaired, we decided to paint it ourselves. So I've been working on prepping that today. We had a bunch of holes for wires and cables and things like that, so I plugged those up with caulk. And now working the paint into all the little tiny little holes, which is so hard. The roofer left us some paint when they did some fixes that exactly matched the stucco, and thanks Alex for testing it a couple of days ago so we can be sure it matches before we do all this work. But just going through by hand right now and trying to work it in. It's
Long going,
forever.
huh?
Yeah.
If we zoom out a little bit, we could see the part that she did already, and it looks perfect. Blends in very nicely. I think once it dries, won't even be able to tell. It's a lot of annoying paint work, that's for sure. You gotta get into every little crack and crevice, or at least as many as you possibly can. We'll be doing touch-ups for weeks. Yeah, and feather it out a little bit. But it looks good, babe. After a couple evenings, we have a freshly painted wall and a really nice shelf in front of it. So yesterday I finished the wall, and today I did, well, actually yesterday I also did most of the shelf, but I did touch-ups today, little corners and things with the brush, so all of that's drying. It's a little odd because I was recycling basically the same paint that we got, and this is being painted the same as the wall here. And it even, I think, shows on camera too, but in person, this wall looks so much darker than this shelf. I don't know if it's because it's on drywall versus wood. I don't know, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised with this color because it actually matches the shelf over there pretty perfectly, and that was painted just as it was when we got the place, so even better. It'll just go with the color scheme. We'll go with a white and gray look. Still gotta do up against the wall, so I painted the wall first, then this, so I left a bit of a gap because the wall was still kind of drying, so we'll have to do that later, another round of touch-ups. And I also want to paint this shelf, even though I just put it back on, but because I decided to go ahead and paint this, might as well paint that. That should be really easy to paint. I'm just gonna take it off, paint all three of those boards individually, and then put it all back when it's all dry. And back to the master bath. We've been going back and forth between master bathroom and the garage this week, but decided to put the drywall back, at least in this channel, that we know we can close up. Then I got started taping, and we'll continue that tape all along here, so that way we can start to fill in the mud, and that way we can also start to cover this entire thing. So we have actually gotten some topping mud so that we can just skim this all the way down and make it nice and smooth. So in here we're not going to go with the orange peel texture that we see in the majority of the house. We're actually going to go with this because this will probably be easier to do on a full wall, and this is much more what was done by the previous person on all the other walls where they did stuff like that. Actually, there's quite a few spots here where they didn't even bother to put a top coat. So we're going to be top coating all of these walls, but particularly this wall. We're also going to have to chip away at some of this because there is layers upon layers of mud right there, and that way we don't have to slop a bunch of it on here. We can just hopefully do a good skim coat that we can clear everything from this and make it nice and clean and fresh. So then we can put the cabinet in here finally, and then we can start to put other things like mirrors or a big mirror and light fixtures and all the good stuff. Wrap up this room and be done with it finally.